Hello everyone, today I'm going to be showing you how to overclock your graphics card, specifically the GTX 560 Ti. We're going to be using the stock cooler on the graphics card, so it'll get a little noisy, but it's still going to work for what we want. We're not going to superclock it, ridiculously. We're going to be using a program called MSI Afterburner. You can download it for free. I'll have a link in the video info below. We're also going to be using a few benchmarking and stability testing programs, one of which is Firmark, which also you can download for free, link in the video info below. So let's get started. So we have MSI Afterburner open here. You can see it's very simple to use. We have a bunch of our options here listed, and there's just a little slider that you literally can just take and slide around to what you want. So here we're going to apply. You can also save your profiles here, save up to 5, which I'll be using throughout this video. So here we go. My profile number 1 is the stock. As you can see, the core clock 822, shaded clock 1645. These two are linked, so as you move the core clock, the shaded clock will move with it appropriately. I have the standard memory clock is 2004, and I have it set so that the fan speed is auto. It's basically a 1-to-1 ratio, fan speed to temperature. If the fan, if the temperature reaches, 75 degrees, the fan speed will be at 75% of its, capacity. So I have Firmark here. Basically, it's just a free program you can download. You can use it to get a benchmarking score, which you can use to compete against other graphics cards of the same type. You can change all sorts of settings. In this case, because of my monitors, we're going to be doing 1920 by 1080, and we'll be doing 4 times anti-aliasing. It's a 60-second time-based benchmark. You can see we have benchmarking selected there. So, we're going to run the benchmark. And you can see it runs for 60 seconds. It runs this furry donut thing. And it shows you in the upper left, it shows you your minimum, your average, and your maximum FPS, as well as current on the top. It shows you some information about your graphics card and all that stuff. You can see with Afterburner, you can see also on the left, you can monitor the performance of your graphics card. You can see like what your temperature is on the top there, GPU usage. You can check a bunch of different settings, whatever you want to see. You can see we're doing it at default, so the core clock is 822, pushing it to 823 here. As you can see, it's now finished the test. It'll give you a score. You can see I scored 4,998, so just below the 5,000 mark. My GPU temperature reached 70 degrees. You can see the FPS listed here, all that kind of stuff, so you can, benchmark it there. You can see we have our profiles here. I'm going to select number 4. This profile I boosted up to 950 with the memory clock at 2100. You have to make sure you apply. So I now have number 4 applied. You can see that all my clocks have jumped up. 1920 by 1080 benchmarking 4 times anti-aliasing with 60 seconds, and we're gonna go. Now you can see we're gonna look at our Firmark score. You can see that, remember, before it was 4,998, just below 5,000. Now we're at 5,235. You can see, my new averages, FPS, and all that kind of stuff. If you're really looking for the average, I average 87 frames per second right there, which is very, very good. Alright, I'm going to run one more benchmarking test here. I call this the ultimate one. I push it up to 980 core clock, and the memory clock's at 2200. We're going to do another benchmark. You can see benchmarking 1920 by 1080, 4 times anti-aliasing, 60 seconds, go. And you can see furry donut with the veins in it. It's going to do whatever the hell it does. And if you see, there's a little bit of artifacting right there. That is a sign that maybe you might be pushing it too hard. It's not stable enough to run. So you can see we finished the test. It did do it successfully. So now you can see we push it up to 5467 for my score. Keep in mind the original score was just under 5,000. So we pushed up nearly 500 points. You can see my new FPS averages and all that. We're up to 91 frames per second average. So now you want to see if it's stable or not. So we're going to go to firm arc. We're going to do a stability test this time around. We're going to go and do a stability test, 9020 by 1080, 4 times anti-aliasing. A stability test runs for a long period of time to really, put it to the test to see if it's going to work. I can guarantee you that this is not going to work. It's going to crash at some point. I just want to show you what that looks like. At the bottom, you're constantly monitoring the temperature, but up top here, it still looks the same. You can see it stopped right there. My driver crashed. You can see it's an NVIDIA problem. It didn't do it properly. And essentially when you see that, it means you pushed it too high. It didn't mean it damaged anything, it just means the driver crashed to prevent any, damages to your graphics card. So would you like to visit? No, go away. You can see now the program, it crashed, which means that 980 on my card is too high. So we'll go back down here. We're going to load. We pushed it now down. You can see the clocks are now down. Profile 4, 950, 2100 clock. We're going to apply it. We're going to do a stability test. 1920 by 1080, 4 times anti-aliasing. Go. You can see now the program is going to run one more time. This takes a very long time to go through the full stability test. Typically I go through halfway, and I feel like a halfway point would be enough. But if you want to really test to see if it's good enough, you can let it run the full time. Okay, so now we're going to run more of a real world scenario. We're going to open up the first level of Battlefield 3, and we're going to play that opening sequence when you jump out of the train, jump through the window, and then get shot a bunch by the dude standing there because we're not going to fight back. That whole time frame is about 45 seconds. It'll vary between each test by about a second or two depending on when the AI decides to kill me, but it should be right around the same within give or take a second or two. We're going to run that. We're going to use Fraps as our benchmarking software. It'll record the frame rate, the min, max, and the average, and we'll do that for each of my Afterburner profiles. I will say now that the 980 megahertz profile will not work. It'll crash. To get that to work, we would have to boost the voltage, and personally, I don't want to do that. It's more of a basic, simple tutorial on how to overclock. So as you just saw, overclocking your graphics card is pretty simple to do, and you can get some pretty noticeable differences in frame rate on the games that you play. It is something that you have to do a lot of experimenting with, a lot of tweaking with. So if you want to overclock your graphics card, you have to make sure you have time for it. You have to make sure you're willing to commit to constantly tweaking. You have to be willing to allow your game to crash randomly, then you have to reset everything. You have to be ready for that to happen, because it will. As you saw with the testing, I was able to get my core clock up to 950 megahertz and my memory clock up to 2100, which is, a noticeable jump from where the standard clock was at 822 core clock, and was it 2004 was the memory clock. So MSI Afterburner does not work with only the GTX 560 Ti, it also works with other graphics cards, and not just NVIDIA cards, it works with AMD cards as well. So it's definitely worth checking. I'll post a link in the information below about Afterburner, how to download Afterburner, and like which graphics cards are supported. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know, leave a comment, and I'll try and respond to you as soon as possible. These tests show that once again, the GTX 560 Ti is definitely a great graphics card. With the new 600 series coming out, it's making the older 500 series a little bit cheaper, so they're now more into a price range that you may be willing to get. The GTX 560 Ti is an excellent buy, and it's perfect for a budget build computer because it's kind of that step above the 560 and just below the 570. However, you can overclock your GTX 560 to get some improvements to get yourself closer to the 570. Again, the programs I used was MSI Afterburner to do the actual overclock. I used Furmark for my benchmarking and stability testing. And then I used the intro level of Battlefield 3 and Fraps to benchmark that game.